Need some new Modern Horizons cards? Well, you can pre-order them from our sponsor Card Kingdom by heading over to cardkingdom.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Modern Horizons 2 spoilers, and oh my goodness, it is finally here. Wizards just had a stream a little while ago showing off new cards. We got 12 of them to talk about, and this set is off the charts. I don't even know what to say. I've been so hyped for this set, and the more cards they show off, the more sweet references, the more powerful effects, the more cool arts and callbacks. I'm just getting more and more hyped by the day. This set is absolutely bonkers, and we got a ridiculous amount of really sweet, really powerful stuff to talk about, which means we should probably jump right into it, start talking sweet new Modern Horizons 2 cards. And first up today, we have a new Planeswalker, Dakkon Shadow Slayer. You can see the three different versions of the set. So 3 mana in the Esper colors, 0 loyalty, looks a little bit weird, but it has a static ability where it enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters equal to the number of lands you control. So you play it on turn 3, it's going to have 3 loyalty. If you play in the late game, it could have 6 or 10 or 20. So the loyalty goes up as the game goes along. As far as the abilities, +1, Surveil 2, pretty powerful. -3, exile a creature. -6, you may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. That ability has potential to do some ridiculous things. So Dakkon, it's a callback to an old Dakkon, and I love that they even got the same artist, Richard Kane Ferguson, an old-time Magic artist from the early days, to come back and do the art on the new Dakkon. Even calls back to the abilities a little bit with the land thing. But as far as our new Dakkon, Shadow Slayer, this card is really powerful. If you look at this card, it's kind of like a juiced-up version of a bunch of different things. We have like Jace Mirror Mage, 3 mana Planeswalker, +1 to Scry 2. Well, Dakkon, 3 mana Planeswalker, Surveil 2, which is just strictly better. You can mill cards you don't want out of your way. You can get them in the graveyard to flash them back or snapcaster them or reanimate them, whatever. In general, surveilling is just better scrying. And then we have -3 to exile a target creature. So an upgraded murder that exiling, especially big in Modern when you got like Lurrus running around, other recursive effects. And then the -6 can reanimate an artifact or let you put it into play from your hand. And remember, if you get up to 6 lands, this will come into play with 6 loyalty, and you can do this right away. So you play this and just slam some busted artifact into play. Dakkon is really, really sweet. So what are we doing with Dakkon? And I think there's a couple of things. My guess is, because we have so many strong Planeswalkers, you are going to have to be in a deck that can do something with the -6. I think if you have like no artifacts in your deck, then I'm not sure Dakkon is worth it, even though like the combo of like surveilling, setting up your draws, filling your graveyard, and then -3 to kill something, do it again, that is pretty good. But when you consider how many strong Planeswalkers there are in Modern, I don't know if that's good enough. The good news is we got strong artifacts. There's like Bolas's Citadel, there's Blightsteel Colossus, there's Inkwell Leviathan, there's Mirror Battlesphere. It's pretty easy to just play Dakkon on 4, 5, even 6 lands, and within a turn or two, be putting some artifact into play that can just take over the game all by itself, which is probably the strongest thing this Planeswalker can do. On the other hand, as I mentioned before, would you just play this in like Esper Control? And I feel like it does good things for that deck. Let's say you're playing Esper Control, you got 0 artifacts. You don't really have anything to do with that last ability. The combination of surveilling, exiling, potentially having high loyalty, setting up your Snapcasters, your search for his contos, whatever. Like, I feel like that's actually pretty powerful. The problem is, we got Teferi, which is busted. We got Narset, which is busted. So unless you can take advantage of the artifact ability, I'm not sure that Dakkon beats out the other Planeswalkers, even though it is a very strong effect. Maybe it shows up as like a 1-of or something. You don't want too many of the same Planeswalker because they are legendary. So I think it's possible it shows up in small numbers, but really, you want to be some sort of artifact control deck, I think, to take advantage of Dakkon. Same thing goes for Commander, and I think we will also see Dakkon show up in Commander. If you're playing like Breya, Sidri, some sort of Silas Wren partner pile that has white mana, I think that Dakkon is definitely worth it, because in Commander, remember, you're going to get up to 6 lands. Like, that's what the format's about. So I would imagine in Commander, you really don't even play this unless you're desperate and you really just got to kill something. Use it like an efficient removal spell. But you just wait, get up to 6 mana, slam this into play, slam an artifact into play from your graveyard or your hand, hopefully use it to just take over and win the game in short order. So I think the gun is sweet. It's got a sweet callback. It's got awesome art. It's a pretty powerful Planeswalker, but I don't think this is quite Ren in 6 level. I don't think we're going to have the Ren in 6 problem where it's getting like banned in Legacy and showing up in a ton of different decks and being a little bit annoying. I think Dakkon is safer than that, but I really like this card. It is a good Planeswalker for Modern, potentially for Legacy, definitely for Commander, so really sweet new addition to Modern Horizons 2. Speaking of sweet new additions, maybe the scariest, most busted card that we've seen today. I don't know. If there's a card that we're talking about today that I could see maybe being problematic in our future at Modern, it's this one. That is Grief. Perfect name for this card. 4 mana, 3/2 Elemental Incarnation. It has Menace. When it enters a battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards it. That doesn't sound too scary. 4 mana Thoughtseize on a body with Menace. What's the big deal about that? The big deal is it has Evoke of Exile, a black card from your hand. So if you don't know Evoke, it means you can cast the creature for that cost, but then you gotta sacrifice it when it comes into play. So this is a free Thoughtseize, essentially. Actually, the best comparison is it's Unmask. Unmask is an old card that sees play all the way back to Legacy that essentially does the same thing. Grief is a creature, but really, exile black card from your hand to Thoughtseize your opponent. That's what Grief is doing as well. And Unmask, while it's narrow in the decks it goes in, normally like protecting combos, it is a Legacy playable effect, and we don't have anything like this in Modern, and I would argue that Grief is probably just better than Unmask. It is like an improved Unmask, which is absolutely insane. So you might be wondering, like, why is this exciting? Like, Thoughtseize is already in the format. Inquisition is already in the format. Why would I want this creature where if I want it to be a Thoughtseize early in the game, I'm going to have to take and exile a card from my hand? Like, why would I 2-for-1 myself to Thoughtseize? That doesn't really feel all that exciting to me when I could just cast an actual Thoughtseize. The answer is there are shenanigans. So probably the most devastating, insane thing you can do with Grief is use it with Ephemerate or Cloud Shift. So let's say you're playing some sort of, black-white taxi annoy you style deck. Turn 1, before your opponent even gets to do anything, you play your Grief with Evoke, exiling the card from your hand. With its sacrifice trigger on the stack, you can Ephemerate it, so you can take and exile it, blink it, it's going to come back into play. That's going to give you 2 Thoughtseizes, and since you blink the Grief, the Evoke downside's not going to be there. So you're actually going to get to keep your 3/2 Menace as well. Can do the same trick we see with Kroxa, too, with like Village Rites, where sure, you're going down a card to cast this, but then you're Village Ritesing it with the sacrifice trigger on the stack, so you're drawing 2 cards to make up for it. So I think that is the most devastating aspect of this card. Like, with Ephemerate, it's insane. It's insane! With Ephemerate, turn 1, you're going to get 2 Thoughtseizes that don't cost you life, and then you're going to get another Ephemerate when you untap, so you're going to Thoughtseize your opponent thrice, 3 times, over the first 2 turns of the game. That is absolutely bonkers. I don't know how a deck comes back from something like that. We also have potential locks with this deck, with like Eldrazi Displacer, where you can take in on your opponent's upkeep, wait till they draw their card, and then you blink your Grief on the draw step. Your opponent, either they drew something and cast at instant speed, or they drew a useless land, or you take the card with your Grief, and then you do it again the next turn, and you do it again the next turn. We've kind of seen this already with Tidehollow Sculler, but Tidehollow Sculler, it puts the card back in your opponent's hand. Grief does the same thing, except the card's going away forever, so you can do the draw step lock play with Grief as well. Plus, we got cards like Vengevine that just care about cheap creatures being cast. Get it in the graveyard with your Burning Inquiries or whatever you're doing to get Vengevine in the graveyard. Dredge it. Grief-free creature that also Thoughtseizes to make sure your opponent doesn't have a path and the coast is clear so it can take over the game. Grief is insane. It is insane. This card is absolutely busted. I think this card is going to be great in Modern. I don't think you're going to just play it in any deck like a Thoughtseize, because in a random deck with no synergies, there is a cost to 2-for-1ing yourself. Like going down 2 cards to Thoughtseize, that is a little bit rough, but in the decks with those shenanigans we're talking about, Grief is going to be incredibly powerful, and I am legitimately scared of what this can do in the Modern format. Speaking of legitimately scary cards, take a look at Thrasta Tempest Roar. This is our honorary green mythic stompy creature that just has an absurd amount of text on it. So Thrasta, 12 mana, 7/7. Legendary Dinosaur. The big deal is it costs 3 less to cast for each other spell you cast at the start. So let's say you cast 3 spells. Thrust is going to be 3 mana. If you cast 4 spells, it's going to be just 2 green mana. So even though it has this relatively high looking mana cost, that is very deceptive in the decks that can take advantage of this. And then if you read the rest of it, it has Trample and it has Haste. So when smack your opponent right away, it tramples over Planeswalkers. So if you attack your opponents to Fairy or something, you kill it, and then the excess damage is going to go at your opponent's face, and it has a hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn. So it's not hexproof forever, but it pretty much guarantees that you're going to get in this one big smashy attack with Thrasta, maybe kill a Planeswalker, worst case just smash your opponent's face. It's a 7/7 trample haste with upside for potentially 2 mana, and I know you're probably thinking, well, that's magical Christmas land. How am I going to cast 3 or 4 spells and then cast this dinosaur? Remember, we're talking about Modern here, so this is like Questing Beast on steroids. We already have the cards to make this happen. Manamorphose, Lava Dart, Gut Shot, Mutagenic Growth. These cards are already playing. Picture this. On turn 3, you go Manamorphose, Lava Dart, Flashback Lava Dart. That by itself, that's only 3 cards. That's going to give you your hasty Thrasta. You could do it even faster with something like Gut Shot. You could go Manamorphose, Gut Shot, 2 mana Thrasta. Mutagenic Growth on your other creatures also gets the job done. And these are cards that already see play into your decks. They already show up in the Blitz style decks with Swift Spears, in Soulscar Mages, in Stormway Entities. So we know the support for this play pattern is here. Of course, the drawback of Thrasta is it is bad off the top. If you're empty-handed and everything goes wrong and you draw off the top and it's 12 mana, you're going to be very, very sad, but it is incredibly explosive, having the ability to take over the game really quickly and having plenty of support cards in the Modern format. If you want to, you could also go the creature plan. Remember, Thrasta isn't prowess. It doesn't care about instants or sorceries. It just cares about any spells being cast. So you could go Ornithopter, Memnite, Ornithopter, get the cost down to 3 mana, start attacking, play a Bushwhacker or something, I don't know, something like that. So Thrasta seems insane. It is definitely high risk, high reward. There will be games where it's horrible and stuck in your hand, and maybe that inconsistency keeps it from seeing top tier play. On the other hand, its potential for taking over the game really quickly is high, and it has an incredibly high power level. So Thrasta, this card is very frightening. It's going to take some work to build around. We'll see if it actually gets there, but if it does, this card is going to be trampling over Planeswalkers and winning games in Modern. We also got Unmarked Grave. So Unmarked Grave, 2 mana sorcery, search your library for a non-legendary card, put it in your graveyard, then shuffle. So Unmarked Grave is our modern Entomb, obviously worse than Entomb. Entomb is 1 mana, instant, and gets any card. Unmarked Grave, 2 mana sorcery, non-legendary card, but we don't have Entomb in Modern. So having something like Entomb is still pretty interesting. We don't have anything anywhere near as efficient as Unmarked Grave for putting a card of our choice directly in the graveyard. I will say, the non-legendary restriction is huge. If you look at the cards that you're most commonly entombing in a format like Legacy, you're going to be entombing Iona, let's say, Grizzlebrand, maybe Emrakul if you have instant speed reanimation. Those are all legendary creatures, and these would also be a lot of the all-stars that you would snag with something like Unmarked Grave in Modern. So there is a drawback to not being able to hit legends, because some of the best reanimation targets are legendary. On the other hand, we've played some sweet reanimator decks that don't care about legends, like trying to reanimate Ashen Riders in Woodfall Primuses, with Footsteps of the Goryo, or in Burial Rites, perfect with Unmarked Grave, because Unmarked Grave, it doesn't just say creatures. You can put any card in your graveyard. So if you need to, and you already have the creature in the graveyard, you can get an Unburial Rites to flash back. But in the deck that we played, the Land Destruction Reanimator deck, Unmarked Grave seems absolutely perfect. On turn 2, you get your Woodfall Primus. Turn 3, Footsteps it, Woodfall Primus, blow up your thing, it sacrifices, it comes back, blow up another one of of your lands, leave you with no resources. So I think there are ways to take advantage of this, and we got Worldspine Worms, a very strong reanimation target. 15/15 trample that leaves behind 15 power of bodies if it dies. We got Inkwell Leviathan that used to be good enough with Island Walk and Trample and Shroud a few years ago before other stuff came along. So there are cards worth reanimating that are not legendary in the modern format. So we'll have to see. Getting rid of legends takes off the most obvious options. Like, if Entomb was printed into modern, you would immediately know what you're doing with it. 100% of the time you're going like Griselbrand or Iona, like that's what you would do with Entomb. Unmarked Grave, way more interesting than Entomb. Less powerful, but way more interesting, and maybe it puts some of these not quite there reanimation targets back on the table. Also worth mentioning, as we talked about before, you don't gotta be a reanimation deck. Like, you can be a Storm deck and Unmarked Graves to get past In Flames, to flash it back and Storm off. Or maybe you're just putting a Vengevine in the graveyard, so you can evoke out a couple of griefs and get a back, or getting a Stinkweed to start your dredge plan. So there's actually a lot of possibilities outside of reanimation as well, and if you're playing Commander, this card's going to be great. Commander already likes Entomb. Reanimation is really powerful and popular. Plus, in Commander, you got Reanimate and you got Animate Dead, cheap, effective reanimation spells. The problem is in Commander, you're 100-card singleton. So the battle is always consistency. There's only one Entomb. Well, now you got two Entombs. Yeah, you got to work around your non-legendary thing. But still, if you're playing a reanimation strategy, Chainer, Zweidan, Belther, something like that, I think the Unmarked Grave is going to be Entomb number 2 in your deck pretty much all the time. So Unmarked Grave, the card is pretty interesting. I don't know what it'll do in Modern exactly. The non-legendary part is going to take some thinking and building around, but it is a powerful effect, easy, immediate inclusion in Commander, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if we find something sweet to do with it in Modern either. We also got Profane Tutor. So Profane Tutor, it is Demonic Tutor with no mana cost and suspend 2. So basically on turn 2 you suspend this, you wait a couple of turns, when it comes off suspend, you get to Demonic Tutor. Is this card gonna be good? I really don't know. So it's a literal Demonic Tutor. The downside is you are paying the same exact price, and you gotta wait a bunch of time. Normally with something like Demonic Tutor, you often want to snag the card that you need right away in a given situation. Like, I'm about to die, I need a removal spell. I'm about to win, let me get my combo piece. Profane Tutor can't really do that. You draw it off the top, and you have that delay because of suspend, unless you have shenanigans to cheat it into play. So it'll be interesting to see how good this card ends up being. Of course, we do have ways to cheat it into play. We've seen other cards with no mana cost be very good with As Foretold. Show up with Cascade style decks where you can spin into it and still cast it, or Electro Dominance. So there are ways to cheat this card into play. On the other hand, most of the no mana cost cards that get cheated into play pretty much win the game, or at least come very close to it. Like, Restore Balance basically wins the game by getting rid of all your opponent's resources. Living End usually wins the game by wrathing the board and getting you back like 3 or 4 or 10 creatures from the graveyard. Even Crashing Footfalls puts 8 power of Tramplers into play really quickly, which can win the game by itself. Profane Tutor, it doesn't win the game. It can find you a card that can win you the game, but I actually wonder if like the As Foretold style decks are even going to care about Profane Tutor, or if they just want something that's more impactful, like a Restore Balance or a Living End. So Profane Tutor, I like the callback. It is worth pointing out that the suspend is only 2, so you don't have to wait that long to get your tutor, so that does help, although it is still a pretty big deal if you don't have this on turn 2 and you're drawing it on turn 4 or turn 6. 2 turns then is probably the difference between you being alive and you being dead. So I don't know if Profane Tutor is actually good in Modern, but it's definitely a sweet callback, and another tutor for Commander. In Commander, I guess the only drawback is you're going to draw a lot of heat. If you suspend this and people know your tutor is coming, they're probably going to attack you brutally for the next turn or two while you're waiting for your tutor to come off suspend. But once it does come off suspend, maybe you can get something that's powerful enough to get back in the game. So not convinced that Profane Tutor is actually that good, but I love the design. Super sweet callback. Next on our list, we got Rishadan Dockhand, a new 1-mana merfolk with Island Walk. You get a 1/2, and you pay 1, tap it to tap target land. So Rishadan Dockhand, calling back to Legacy Stable Rishadan Import, a very powerful effect. And if you've never seen Rishadan Import deck, the idea of this is you wait until your opponent's upkeep and then tap down one of their lands to keep them off of mana. Most commonly it's played in a deck with a lot of other taxing effects and wastelands and kind of a resource denial strategy. Rishadan Dockhand, it does the same thing. I don't think it's anywhere near as powerful. As a creature, much easier to kill, and as a creature, you're probably going to want to attack with it sometimes, but still, it is an interesting ability. I think the biggest deal about this card is it's a merfolk. If Rishadan Dockhand is going to see play in Modern, I don't think it's going to make it as just a generic card. I don't think you just play a random Bant Company deck and throw this in. Or some random, I don't know, Soul Herder deck. I'm just trying to think of like creature decks that have blue. But I don't think you just throw this in a random deck and try to make it good. I don't think it's going to be good enough. On the other hand, in Merfolk Tribal, I think this has a chance to not only be played, but potentially be very good for a couple of reasons. With a big one being, Merfolk is kind of like a resource denial deck in a weird way. Because Merfolk is built around Island Walk Lords, you're often playing Spreading Seas, or even Seas Claim, to turn your opponent's lands into island, with the main idea being you can Island Walk in with unblockable damage and close out the game. But as the unintended benefit of kind of mana screwing your opponent sometimes. Like, you can kind of do this weird, like, enchantment Blood Moon style thing. So in Merfolk, you can take in Spreading Seas, a bunch of lands, and then use Rishadan Dockhand to tap down the lands that actually make colors of mana that your opponents need, and that could actually be a legitimate play. The other thing is, there's not a lot of competition for the 1-drop slot in Merfolk. Like, Curse Catcher, I guess, is okay. Benthic Biomancer, I've seen. Kumana Speaker's aggressive, but you gotta go in green, which most Merfolk decks don't want to. So there's just very minimal competition for the 1-mana Merfolk slot. So I think that Rishadan Dockhand probably gonna be a new Merfolk playable, maybe even a new Merfolk staple, almost by default. So I don't think it's like a busted card or anything, but it fits in a slot in the curve where Merfolk really needs help, and it does synergize well with Merfolk's resource denial, turn your stuff into island plan. So I don't think Rishadan Dockhand is just going to show up in any deck. In Merfolk in specific, this could be a pretty good option. Is it enough to like push Merfolk forward up to like tier 2, tier 1 from tier 3 where it is now? I don't know about that, but it definitely should help the deck to some extent at least. We also got another sweet callback card, Timeless Dragon. So 5 mana dragon. You get a 5/5 with flying and plane cycling, so you can discard it to search your library for a planes, put it in your hand, and then it has Eternalize, so you can exile it from your graveyard, and you make a 4/4 black zombie dragon copy of it, essentially. So, Timeless Dragon, it calls back to Eternal Dragon, another old plane cycling dragon that was pretty good 20 years ago, like a long, long time ago. The problem is, it's not 20 years ago, and I'm kind of skeptical that Timeless Dragon is going to be more than a flavor piece. It is nice that plane cycling lets you get any plane, so you can snag Shocklands, you can snag Triumph, so it is a source of mana fixing, and there are decks that care about getting cards in the graveyard. If you're dredging, maybe this is free value if you dredge it, or it's like a semi-free discard to Cathartic Reunion because you can internalize it. The problem is, it's just a 4/4. Like, if you cast it, it's a 5/5 flyer for 5 that's essentially vanilla. And if you don't cast it and you eternalize it, it's a 4/4 flyer for 4, which still dies to Fatal Push, and a 4/4 flyer just isn't that exciting in Modern these days. We have a million 4/4 flyers, we have a million 5/5 flyers, and they just don't tend to be good enough for Modern. So I love the callback to an iconic old card. It's cool to see more white dragons. We don't get that many of them. If you want to play in Dragon Tribal and Commander, pretty good in 5-color dragons, I guess, because it helps with your fixing thanks to plane cycling. But really, I don't really think this is much of a Modern playable. It's more of a sweet flavor card, maybe a Commander Dragon card. We also got Yusri Fortune Flame. So Yusri, 3 mana, is it? You get a 2/3 flying a free. When it attacks, choose a number between 1 and 5, flip that many coins. For each flip you win, you draw a card. For each flip you lose, you take 2 damage. If you won 5 flips this way, you can cast spells from your hand this turn without paying its mana cost. So this is a card that I'm sure is going to kill me in Commander. You know, I'm picking 5, I'm flipping them all, I'm horrible at coin flipping, I'll probably draw like 1 card and take 8 damage, but I'm going to love every minute of it. This is just such a cool design. So in Modern, we do have Carrick's Carrick's Thumb, and Carrick's Thumb does help win coin flips, not enough to consistently win 5 in a row. You're still gonna have to get pretty lucky, so I don't think this is a modern card. I mean, I guess you could play it and like flip a coin to try to draw a card, but it's just a 2/3 flyer. It dies to Lightning Bolt. On the other hand, this is an amazingly sweet commander card. There just aren't that many good coin flipping commanders, and Yusri is an insane one. So right now we have Zundersplit and Oaken, the partner pair. We have Carrick plus whatever, but we don't really have that many coin flip commanders. I think Yusri is either going to show up in the 99 of your Zundersplit, Oaken, or Carrick deck. I think that's an easy inclusion, or this might just be the new sweetest coin flip commander available, because in Commander, you got a lot of life, and you can't afford to take some damage and take some risk. If you can tutor up your Carrick's Thumb, you can afford to 2, 3, 4 turns even, spin all 5 dice and just hope for the best. And if you can get a little bit lucky and hit one time and draw 5 cards and get an Omniscience for a turn, you're probably just going to sling a bunch of spells and win the game. So Yusri, is it a good competitive card? No. Is it an amazingly sweet design and a super fun commander card, either as your commander or in the 99 of a coin flip deck? Yes, it is. So even though I don't think this card is going to do anything at all in Modern, I love this card. Really, really fun new addition to Modern Horizons. Finally today, we got a reprint, and it is a huge one. Cabal Coffers finally making its return. This card has not been reprinted in a long time, so long that it's not even legal in Modern until Modern Horizons 2 comes along and puts it into the format. But this is a card that is an ultra staple in Commander, and as a result, it's like $115 for the cheapest version. So yes, I know it has been upgraded to Mythic. It's not going to be super plentiful, but still, this should help bring the price down. It should get more copies out there, and we desperately need more Cabal Coffers in the wild, specifically for Commander players. So if you're playing Commander and you're playing a heavy black deck, you pretty much just always play Cabal Coffers. It's so powerful. Pay 2, tap it, add a mana for each swamp you control. As the game goes along, this can easily be a land that's tapping for 5 or 10 or some ridiculous amount of mana. So pretty much any heavy black Commander deck is going to want it. In Modern, we don't really have anything anywhere close to as powerful. We do have Cabal Stronghold, which was a reference to Cabal Coffers from Dominaria, but it was way watered down. Carry only about basic swamps, being 3 in tap rather than 2 in tap. Most importantly, we got Cabal Coffers' best friend in Modern, which is Urborg, the easiest trick to abuse Cabal Coffers. Play an Urborg so all of your lands, including Cabal Coffers, are swamps, and then Cabal Coffers starts making a lot of mana. Once you get up to 4 mana, Cabal Coffers starts producing mana. Once you get to 5 lands, 6 lands, 7 lands, Cabal Coffers gets insane. It produces so much mana, and we got plenty of ways to tutor this up in Modern. Like, Primeval Titan can grab Cabal Coffers and Urborg, so can Hour of Promise, Expedition Map, Sylvan Scrying. So if you want to build around Cabal Coffers in Modern, there's certainly ways to do it and find it consistently. What you do with the mana, I'm not 100% sure. We got Bolas's Citadel to storm off with. We got Grey Merchant, maybe Mono Black Devotion. You can just ramp into Big Eldrazi. Like, there's a ton of things you can do with it. Plus, we got ways to untap it. Like, if you're on the Primeval Titan plan, Amulet of Vigor will untap your coffers along with your Urborg, so you can activate it right away, kind of making your Titan free. We got Kiora's Followers, other shenanigans like that. So there is potential for this in Modern. On the other hand, Modern is pretty prepared for non-basic lands. Because of Tron in specific, there's a lot of Blood Moons, there's a lot of Damping Spheres, there's a lot of Cleansing Wildfires and Fulminator Mages, and there's a lot of ways to answer this. So I'm not actually sure that Cabal Coffers is going to do that much in Modern. I'm excited to try to build around it and see what crazy things it can do, because in the best case scenario, Cabal Coffers is busted. It is incredibly powerful. Is the Modern meta too hostile for a deck like this to work? We'll see. Devotion decks have typically kind of been fringe. Cabal Coffers shares some similarities with something like Nykthos, that it is a land that's susceptible to land hate, and it is a little bit slow. Like, on turn 3, even if you have Urborg, Cabal Coffers isn't really doing anything. It's just breaking you even. So you're looking at 4+ lands for it to make mana, and really like 5, 6, 7 lands for it to be busted. So you kind of got to build around it, I think, and Modern can be pretty fast. So I'm in wait-and-see mode as to how good this will actually be in Modern, but this is a great reprint. Little disappointed to see a card that was originally printed as an uncommon climb all the way up the rarity rankings to Mythic. Would have been a little bit happier if it was a rare or even an uncommon, but I can't complain too much because any new copies of Cabal Coffers to help fuel Commander players' insatiable appetite for big mana strategies is going to be a good thing. So would have been better as an uncommon or a rare, but I will still take it at Mythic. Finally today, we got two, I would say, pseudo reprints in Old Border Force and Negation, Old Border Giver of Roots. So these are two modern staples. Force and Negation, an ultra staple of Modern. Giver Runes also very heavily played. The thing about these cards is I wouldn't consider them true reprints. Apparently there's going to be an Old Border Modern Horizon 1 reprint slot, but only in collector's boosters for Modern Horizons 2. So you have no chance of opening this sweet Force and Negation or Giver of Runes in a normal booster box, only in collector booster boxes. Last I looked, collector boosters are $400, $450. So I think that it's awesome that these cards exist. I'm never going to be unhappy about special expensive reprints. That's fine, but this is not going to be a reprint that's going to really bring down prices, I don't think. This is more of a vanity reprint, where some people pay a lot of money to have a special version of the card, but the amount that supply is going to increase is going to be really, really low, since these are only showing up in collector's boosters, and collector's boosters are absurdly expensive at the moment. So I'm glad that these cards exist. Maybe I'll snag some on Magic Online because they look cool, but don't expect to just run into one of them at your pre-release or in your normal draft booster box, because they are not going to be there, only in collector boosters. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Modern Horizons 2 spoilers for today. So what do you think of all these ridiculous new cards? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy it. And I will be back on Monday when Modern Horizons 2 spoilers pick back up. Oh yeah, also, we got some early Forgotten Realms spoilers today too. There's a spoiler video up on the site for those. So if you want more spoiler coverage, make sure to check that out as well. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoy it. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.